Oh, there we are. Hello.
Karen was coming. Karen's supposed to meet me here. Oh, hopefully she'll be here. What'd you do, walk? I went outside. You were outside. I walked.
She thought that you said.
I was gonna go with Tara, but she's
All right.
You're usually over at my house. Yes, I am. I had to go to the bathroom. My guts have been hurting.
Oh, there she is.
And there's Tara right there.
All right. So, we're in chapter 8, beginning in verse 11 today. And so, if you'll recall, we have just seen once again the coming Assyrian invasion. Okay, and so he tells Isaiah, write a large tablet and okay. So
Hey, sorry. You can sit here, you can sit here, or wherever. Okay.
All right.
Well,
so
right.
8:11.
8:11.
8:11.
Isaiah.
Isaiah 8:11.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So remember that one of the things that we have seen is the fact that the northern kingdom is going to be destroyed by the Assyrians.
Yes.
Okay. And so now God is continuing this discussion. He says, For the Lord spoke thus to me with his strong hand upon me. Okay. And he warned me not to walk in the way of this people. Okay. So God places his hand on Isaiah and says, now you don't live like this people. Okay. Do not call conspiracy all that this people calls conspiracy. So there is this idea that some of them are saying that it's some kind of conspiracy that, and I'm sure this is part of it. Isaiah saying that the northern kingdom is not going to destroy Judah. Remember in chapter 7, we saw this idea that Israel and Syria were going to come down and sack Judah. Okay. And so some of the leaders in Judah are saying, well, it's a conspiracy. Isaiah is working with the northern kingdom, getting us to lower our guard so that they can come in and take us over. Okay. Because Isaiah is making a prophecy saying, don't worry about the northern kingdom. Nothing's going to happen. Okay. They're going to be gone soon. Oh, no, that's a conspiracy. Okay. And do not fear. So then it goes on, and do not fear what they fear, nor be in dread. So what are they fearing? They're fearing this northern kingdom attack. Yes. So don't fear the same they fear. But the Lord of hosts, him you shall honor as holy. Okay, now remember, when we talk about the Lord of hosts, what that means is the Lord of the armies of heaven.
Mine actually says army.
The Lord of the hosts of angels, the Lord of the hosts of, okay. Him you shall honor as holy. So you'll honor him and let him be your fear and let him be your dread. Okay, now wait a minute. So I thought we're supposed to love God. Why this discussion of fear?
We talked about this morning in Bible study. Because we should fear him, because if we don't do what he outlines, there's consequences, and he always keeps his word.
Okay.
And he's mighty and big.
Okay. So there's another element to this that I think is always important. Okay. And by the way, I recognize that not all earthly fathers are this way. But a good earthly father. Okay, so let me phrase it that way. Okay. So there is a difference, but you've seen it in life. Okay. There is a difference in the behavior of a child when it's been a really good day at home, mom is happy, you've done what mom told you, you haven't gotten into trouble, and dad comes home from work. There's a difference in your reaction to him then than when at some point during the day, Mom has said, you wait till your dad gets home.
Oh, yeah, that happened to me, but with my mother. It was terrible. It was the longest day of my life.
Okay.
It was
So-
sick for my brothers. Yeah.
So understand what I'm saying. You honor him as holy. He is holy. He is totally different and he's totally good. You should fear to disappoint him. You should fear to disobey him. Okay, so understand, in the same way that you can, and by the way, any parent, this is true. There is a mixture in the heart of a child towards their parent, a mixture of love and fear. They love their parent, but they're afraid of what happens if they disobey.
Most kids.
Mine is.
Okay,
My
now
kids.
the trick, you say that, but
She's a lot more afraid than
Okay.
she probably was.
so understand that there are times that the way parents work undermines that. So,
Yeah.
and one of the best examples of that is a parent who is completely unpredictable. Okay, that one time you do something and oh, no big deal, and the next time you do the same thing, it's an explosion. Okay, well, guess what? They never learn how to handle that. Whenever there's consistency,
That's good.
then they learn. And one of the things that I've often told people is, and whenever we talk about setting rules and when we setting consequences, the reason that's important is that when you really look at the way children are raised, every child will push against any barrier you put in their
Oh,
way.
yeah.
Okay, that is, you can just guarantee it. If you say, I don't want you to do this, they're going to test it.
Sky is
That's
blue,
not
no, it's
behavior.
green.
Why? Why do you think they test it that way?
To see if you'll stick to what you said.
That is
or-
part of it, but why do they want to do that?
They want to know what they can get away with.
That's part of it, but it's not really just that. So they're looking for a stable boundary.
Oh, yeah.
So if you tell them, hey, if you don't clean your room, I'm going to,
do that.
then they're going to push against that. And
you
if
gotta do
it
what you
stands
said.
firm, then they know where the wall is.
Yeah.
And if you continue to stand firm, they may test it multiple times, but eventually they will recognize that.
Even if their attitude isn't so great.
Right.
they'll do
Okay.
it. I'm learning.
But when the wall moves every time,
Yes.
and by the way, we see that with some kids that it actually gets to the point that what do? They continue to push every boundary until they finally find one that sticks. And sometimes the sad part is the one that finally sticks is
Prison.
the cops. Okay,
That's all
now
I stick.
hear me when I say this. I'm not saying that every kid is the same or they're all different. And I have seen kids that, oh my gosh, they are just pleasers. And they're going to do everything you ask without the slightest. And I've seen kids that are stubborn. But that is part of what this is talking about. He's saying this. Don't dread the things the people dread. The people are dreading this group coming down. The person you should be dreading is God.
Yeah.
Well, so if you live in dread with him,
Yeah, you should be dreading it though. I mean,
well, dreading what he can do.
oh, wow.
So remember that this is a time of judgment.
Right.
And so while we spend a lot of time talking about the love of God, okay, and we should, it's very important. We sometimes forget that in the Old Testament, God speaks of himself as a consuming fire.
And a jealous God.
And if you,
Nobody drowned everybody and then have Jesus come, because he knew we were all messed up.
okay,
And there was no way we were going to be perfect.
you're right. But at the same time, there does come a point for God even where he says, okay, I'm done. And in the same way as, think about that as a parent. your kid should fear the time when you say, okay, I'm done. You push and push and push and push, and then finally, there's a comedian who used to go that the words that announced that the beatings were about to begin. I have had enough of this.
Yes.
Okay, I have had enough of this, and that's the announcement that the beatings will now begin.
The butt will be.
Okay, but so understand, and it's important that we get this, and remember that a earthly parent is no substitute for God's character. Okay, because every earthly parent fails at some level. God does not. But what God is telling Isaiah is, don't be fearing this army. Fear me.
Right.
Don't fear this group, this nebulous group that's supposed to come attack. Instead, fear me, because you need to turn now. Okay. And he will become a sanctuary and a stone of offense and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Okay. And many shall stumble on it. They shall fall and be broken. They shall be a snare. They shall be snared and taken. Now, here is this. Sanctuary is probably not the best word here.
Mine doesn't even say that. Mine says he will keep you safe.
Okay. He will keep you safe. Okay.
But to Jerusalem or Israel and Judah, he will be a stone that makes people stumble.
So now watch. Here's the trick. Okay. And this is part of what we're talking about. He's speaking specifically to Isaiah. And remember, there are those, at least this seems to be the situation, who are saying that Isaiah is in collusion with the enemy. Okay, and so maybe his life is at risk because of what has been said. I'm going to keep you safe, but and he's saying the Lord is going to cause Judah and Israel to stumble. Why? Because they've been disobedient. They have been in rebellion. See, that's a word we have to make sure we understand in all of this. We tend to try to lower the offensiveness of sin to say, well, I struggle or I stumbled or okay. In all fairness, repeated and rampant sin is rebellion. Okay, so when you have and let's use this phrasing, when you have a king and he has a group of people that are rebelling against him, what does he do?
Kill him.
He puts down the rebellion. And that is what God is saying. I'm going to become a stone of offense and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, a trap and a snare. Okay. Many shall stumble on it. They shall fall and be broken. They shall be snared and be taken. Now, in the end of it, they'll be snared and taken is talking about the Assyrians. They're going to take them into captivity. Bind up, so verse 16, bind up the testimony, seal the teachings among my disciples. So he's saying the stuff that you've written that I've told you to write in the word of the Lord, write it up, bind it up, and okay. I will wait for the Lord. Now, this is kind of an important element. Who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob. So what does that mean?
He's tired of him. He's not Jacob. The house
of Jacob would be the northern kingdom of Israel.
Tribe.
He's hiding his face.
That would mean he's not looking at him, that they're so sinful, he's turned away.
He doesn't. He feels guilty or something.
Well, so their guilt is so rampant. He has turned away his face from them. He can't even look at them anymore.
Which ties into when Jesus is on the cross and he's like, why have you forsaken me?
Right.
It feels like he's
the last thing he said.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will wait for the Lord. He's hiding his face from the house of Jacob, but I will hope in him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of hosts, who dwells in Mount Zion. Now, this is so funny because these are the words of Isaiah. Okay, now, here's the fun part. He says, behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel. Okay, so the names of his kids are prophetic words to the northern kingdom of Israel. Remember, we see him walk in with his son Jer-Jashub, which means a remnant shall return. So it means that almost everybody's going to die.
Nice.
And then another one of his kids is named Maher Shalal Hashbaz, which means speed the spoil, hasten the prey.
Yeah.
Where does it talk about his kids and all that?
So up here a little further, up further in the text. So we have let me find. So in chapter 7, verse 3, it says, go out and meet Ahaz, you and Jer-Jashub your son. Okay, and then at the very beginning of verse 8, it says, and I went to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son. Then the Lord said to me, call him Maher Shalal Hashbaz.
Gotcha.
Now, I will tell you, as kind of a comedy moment, I had a professor at seminary who that's what he would call his fantasy football team every year. Is Maher Shalal Hashbaz. Speed to the spoil, hasten the prey. And so, but anyway, okay. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord had given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of heaven's armies who dwell on Mount Zion. Okay. And when they say to you, inquire of the mediums and the necromancers who chirp and mutter. Okay. Should not a people inquire of their God? So
they can solve the dead for the living.
So watch this idea. When they say to you, we're going to go talk to the mediums and the necromancers.
Bad.
Okay. So what's a medium?
Fortune teller.
Like a psychic.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And a necromancer is one who speaks to and
it says wizard.
Yeah. Well, one who speaks to the dead. Same thing. A medium and a necromancer are both one who has something to do with the dead.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So remember that Saul, when he was king over Israel and Judah, he went and saw the witch at Endor. It's the name. And she was a medium, and she actually called up the ghost of Samuel. Okay. So we think of, and I want to make sure I say this, we think of the Psychic Friends Network. Okay. But there is real demonic.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Communing with demons, saying that it's the dead. Yep. So what he's saying is, well, shouldn't you inquire of your God?
Yeah, you go.
Shouldn't you talk to God instead of this? Why do you inquire of the dead on behalf of the living?
What verse is it?
Verse 19.
No, it says mine says should they consult the dead for the living?
Okay. So to the teaching and to the testimony, this verse 20. If they will not speak according to this word, it is because they have no dawn.
No light in them.
No light in them. Okay. So understand that what God is kind of speaking is the teaching that I have given you, that we have passed on all the way from Moses, is light. But right now, there are people who are teaching things that are contrary to that. They are teaching darkness. They're false prophets. Okay. So, and it says, they will pass through the land greatly distressed and hungry. When they are hungry, they will be enraged, and they will speak contemptuously against their king and their God to turn their faces upward. And they will look to the earth, but behold distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish, and they will be thrust into thick darkness. So it's a pronouncement of judgment. Okay, that anguish will come because they have not followed. Okay. But chapter 9 is interesting because it's very, very important to understand this. It says, but there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Okay, so Zebulun and Naphtali are two of the northern tribes. Okay, and just so that we understand, this is where Nazareth is.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. But in later times, he has made glorious the way to the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. Okay, so now we have Galilee, we have
Galilee of the Gentiles.
Galilee of the Gentiles. Okay, now verse 2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. This is speaking of Jesus. Okay, so remember, Jesus is born in the southern part of Israel, in Bethlehem of Judah. Okay, sometime within the first 2 years of his life, he is whisked away to Egypt because of Herod. He comes back from there after Herod dies, and the guy who's in charge in Judea is still a tyrant. And so they decide, no, we're not going to do that. And so instead, they go north back to where Joseph had been living, which is up in Nazareth in Galilee. And so the Matthew actually brings up that part of the reason they go to Galilee is this passage.
Oh.
Okay, so those who walked in darkness, talking about the northern kingdom who walked in darkness and were destroyed, have seen a great light. Well, what's the light? Well, it's Messiah. Those who dwelled in a land of deep darkness, on them is light shone. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest. So you have made them fruitful once again. You have increased their joy, and they rejoice the day before they go out and harvest a bountiful crop. Okay, and they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor. Okay, so yoke, staff, and rod. A yoke is what?
The thing they hold the ox together with, right?
What?
Like a
So
wooden thing that they
I'm
put
thinking
the
of an egg.
Okay, so that's a different yoke.
I'm like, what?
In this situation, a yoke is when they used to use animals to farm.
Oh.
They would have a harness
Right.
that was a
Oh,
massive
got
piece
you.
of wood,
Yeah.
and they would lay it over. Okay, and that was called a yoke.
Okay. All right.
Y-O-K-E.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I told the car on the yoke.
The yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder. Now, what it's talking about is a staff that they would have been beaten with.
Okay.
Okay, and the rod of his oppressor. So the rod is what you would. Okay, so he's talking about their oppression. It says, you have broken as on the day of Midian. Now, what is he talking about? Well, Midian, he's talking about the story of, oh my gosh, my brain just shut down. Sorry. Of Gideon. Okay, in Midian, where they were oppressed by Midian. And they sent Gideon he sends Gideon, and they have this huge victory, and he frees them. Okay. So we see this moment of lightning, but it's not all of that, because it says, for every boot of the tramping warrior in battle tumult and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. Okay. And then suddenly in verse 6, for to us a child is born. For to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulder. Okay. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Now, I want to make sure we look at these names for a minute because Israel really didn't understand this in the way that we think about. It says, to us a child is born, a son is given. Look at the names he's given. Okay. The children of Israel really had an issue with Jesus saying he was God.
Yeah.
But the names of this child are Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Mighty God and Everlasting Father would be names that would be reserved for God alone. Okay. Of the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end.
Wait a minute. If they had such a problem like with them calling himself the Son of God, what? And didn't they have this prophecy already?
Yes.
So they already knew that this is what they would be. He would be called.
Right.
And they still had issues.
Oh yeah.
Oh, watching.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was
it's
clear.
so it's kind of like this. You have someone tell you if you do this, this is what's going to happen, and you go, no, I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Oh, that's like me.
You know, I've done that so many times.
Yep.
They
My whole life.
refused.
And then-
They refused to believe what God had told them would happen. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. Now, it is important that we get this discussion. Okay. This prophecy is a mixture of the two comings of Jesus.
Okay.
Okay, which is another part of the children of Israel's confusion. They were expecting Jesus to come as a warrior to throw the Romans out.
Gotcha.
Okay. When Jesus comes again, it is not going to be meek and mild and
to throw out Romans.
okay. It is going to be to establish a kingdom that does not end. But remember, and it's important that we get this idea. Did Jesus come the first time to establish a kingdom?
Nope.
Yes.
Yes.
Just not one here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
in
in the Gospel of John, we see Jesus talking to Pilate, and Pilate goes, "So are you a king?" And he goes, "That's why I came. But my kingdom's not of this earth. If my kingdom was of the earth, my followers would come and take me from you and save me. But my kingdom isn't from this earth." God is in his first coming, he's establishing a heavenly kingdom. He's establishing a kingdom and defeating the ultimate enemy. So understand, the other thing that the Jews didn't understand is the Romans were never the main enemy.
No, they were probably some sort of punishment for disobeying.
Well,
The Romans.
so you hit the answer. What's the real enemy?
Their sin because they
Themselves.
keep sinning.
Sin
Themselves.
and death.
Yeah.
The real enemy is sin and death. Okay.
I don't.
No, what were you?
I don't see death as. I see death as a good thing. You know what I mean? I don't.
Okay.
I'm.
But let's make sure we understand the right answer here. Okay. To the one who is in Christ, death is a good thing. The one who is without Christ, death goes to eternal punishment. So before Jesus,
they didn't have any. Oh, well, you don't forgive me this round. No.
But understand the other thing is this: that while yes, ceasing this life with Jesus is a good thing, death is by definition a punishment. Remember, whenever Adam and Eve are in the garden, what does God tell them? If you eat of the fruit of this tree, what will happen?
You will surely die.
You will die. Okay. And when they ate of the fruit,
stripped them.
So
send them out, right?
Well, when they ate the fruit, something very important happened. And we don't catch this very often. Spiritually, as soon as they ate the fruit, they died.
Yeah.
And then physically it was sometime later.
Right. Yeah.
But the idea is in the concept of, and this is the other half of this. When we say the word death, we think about the ceasing of bodily functions. Okay. When the Bible talks about death, especially in this discussion, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about eternal separation from the source of life.
Hell, right? I mean, that's
Well,
what that would be.
That's what that is. So understand that whenever he says, okay, the main enemy was sin and where sin led. And so Jesus comes the first time, and through his death, burial, and resurrection, he gains victory over sin and victory over death. Because he gains victory over sin at the cross because he pays the price. And then he's the only person in all of human history who has raised from the dead. Okay. And not died again.
And not died again. I was gonna say,
So
Lazarus.
Jesus raised several people from the dead, but guess what?
A child.
But guess what happened some years later?
They died.
They died again.
That's just
So
No.
his resurrection, okay, is a promise to us that our physical death does not lead to spiritual death as long as we're surrendered to him. So our physical death is, and this is kind of a weird way of looking at it, our physical death as a follower of Jesus is more like a birth than a death.
because we get to go live our
So think
All
So-
the people that.
So think about it this way. But the reason I say it that way is this. You have a baby in the womb. Okay. When the baby is born, he dies to the existence he had in the womb. He can't go back.
Yeah.
Okay. And everything changes.
Yeah.
There's this
Yes.
massive moment of, and remember that it's not only somewhat traumatic to the mom, but it's
to the baby
traumatic
too,
to the
sure.
baby too.
All of a sudden
And then
it's
suddenly they
loud.
come out to this bright light and it's a whole new existence. Well, the same thing is true of us who are followers of Jesus when this part of our existence ends. When we take our final breath here, we are reborn into, it says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
What a comfort.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't it? That's what I think too.
So that's
I
why
think it's a
Jesus
comfort now.
That's why Jesus makes this comment later that it says in regard to the resurrection that comes through Jesus, he says, death, where's your victory? Because even if this body does give out, I'm okay. Where's your sting? What's the sting of death? Well, it's gone because you're just moved to the next place. And so that's part of this discussion, is that he's defeating the real enemy the first time. Okay, then the second time he's coming back to take what was always his. And then the last words of this says, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. So God is excited about this idea. Zeal is this focused attention.
Mine says the passionate.
Mine says
Commitment.
zeal.
So what verse?
Mine does. It says the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this.
Verse 7, the end of verse 7. He is passionate about this.
Zeal, yeah.
Okay.
Mine says.
So we see this momentary mention of Messiah here in the midst of. Now remember, we've been looking at judgment, hope.
It seems like every time I'm here, this is what we're talking about, judgment.
And then we move back to judgment. So it's
So can we work on the hope? Let's stay there for a little while.
there is a lot of hope in Isaiah, but there's also some judgment. So the Lord has sent a word against Jacob, and it will fall on Israel. And all the people will know, Ephraim and the inhabitants of Samaria, who say in pride and the arrogance of heart, Okay, so now,
Mine says stoutness, which is basically the same thing, right? Just
So,
hardened.
by the way, we will discuss this for a minute. Verse 10 for a little bit. Then, in fact, it may end our night. But so the Lord has sent a word against Jacob, and it will fall on Israel. People will know Ephraim. And then he says, Ephraim and in the inhabitants of Samaria who say in pride and in arrogance of heart. So verse 10 are the words of Israel and Samaria. Okay. The bricks have fallen, but we will build with dressed stones. The sycamores have been cut down, but we will put cedars in their place. Okay. So what do you think that means? Well, that's where it comes up. But what do you think the people of Israel are saying?
Doesn't matter what you do to me, I'm going to rebuild, even though I'm sinful and
Okay.
it's my judgment.
I'm going to use a phrase that some of you remember hearing from 2020.
Oh, gosh.
Build back better.
Build back better. Yep.
I don't know where I was, but definitely wasn't hearing that shit.
Okay. That was the well, but that was the main slogan of the Biden campaign was build back better. Okay. So now hold on. Let me make sure you understand. This is what it's saying. Okay. So our houses were made of brick and they've fallen. So judgment has come. The bricks that we built with, the mud bricks we built with have fallen. But we're going to build back with granite rock.
Oh, that's what they mean by finishing.
And our pine board houses have been cut down and we're going to build back with oak. With cedar.
Yeah, that's better wood, right?
Okay, with better wood. We're going to build back with better stuff.
Yep.
Now, here is why I bring this up this way. This verse was used as a rallying cry right after 9/11. Okay, so there is a real element here that we need to understand what's going on. The president said it, Congress used it. It became a rallying cry.
Which means something, right? Yeah.
So here is the thing that is important. Okay. Notice the motive behind it in this passage. They say in pride and arrogance. Okay. Now, so let's make sure we understand what's going on. God has sent calamity against them because of their sin. And instead of recognizing their sin and recognizing that God has sent calamity and that God has caused this tragedy, no, we're going to build it back better.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Towers higher.
The towers will be
and everything will be better. Yeah. Right. Sure.
So now watch. But the Lord raises the adversaries of Rezin against him and stirs up his enemies. Okay, so here is the really important element to this. They are pronouncing upon themselves further judgment because they are being arrogant in the face of God's judgment. What I will tell you is that the U.S. has done the same thing. They have pronounced upon themselves further judgment because they have refused to bow before the God who has. Okay, so you may disagree with me. I've looked at this and I really agree that so often, we discussed it in Sunday school this morning, so often when God sends judgment, the purpose of judgment is to wake us up.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the alarm clock. Okay. So we see 9/11. We see the tragedy in New York. And remember how for like 3 months we had, God bless America and all that. Okay. And people went to church for a while and all of that.
Yeah, I was
okay.
And I remember how
What?
It was. I said your churches were full for the first 2 weeks.
For about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
wow.
And then suddenly, within days and a few weeks, you begin to see, well, the bricks have fallen, but we will build back stronger than ever before. And what are they saying? They're thumbing their nose.
Yeah, they're telling God, go ahead, do it again. We're just gonna build back better. Yeah.
They're thumbing their nose at God, saying, "Well, we're going to make it better."
Yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want. We'll make it better.
And so, guess what happens? Well, then God turns the heat up again.
Yeah, I bet.
Okay. So I will mention to you that there is a set of books out there called
Yes.
The Harbinger that discusses that and actually goes into some very, very kind of scary prophetic details in all of that. One of them being that where the towers fell, the footprint of where the towers fell ended at a churchyard in New York.
Yep.
The very churchyard where George Washington and the leaders of the U.S. after Washington was inaugurated as the first president, where they went and prayed for the nation, and the Twin Towers fell at that church.
Hey, that's-
Wow.
Wow, right? I know that sound.
So, but the discussion here is fairly simple. It's when we bow up at God, and that is there is no other way to explain what's going on. This is
Yeah,
this is what the
perfect.
situation is.
Yeah.
It is the act of a child
Yeah,
when when dad says something and bowing up and go, try it.
yeah, and then they get knocked across the room.
Okay. And a lot of boys have that moment with their dad. Okay.
It's funny, my boy's scared to have that one.
Well, I just tell my kids, hey, I may not be able to beat you, but I'll cheat. I'll win.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You may be bigger than me now, but I'll win.
Well, I play smart.
Yeah, you got years and years on it. All right? They
But-
think they know it all. They don't
but-
know shit. Sorry.
But the truth of the matter is that's what this verse talks about. It talks about a nation who, in the midst of God judging them for their own misbehavior, bowing up at God and going, "Huh."
Yeah.
Scary.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will stop right there. We'll pick up at 11 next time. 11.
Verse 11. Years ago. I had